Mr. Harmless here, and I'd like to share with you some Google Drive basics in this professional development. A long time ago, we used to have Word documents on our computers. We could type on them, edit. It was basically a word processor. We could find a printer dialog and send these documents to a printer, but that was about the extent of it. There wasn't a whole lot we could do beyond that. Well, to understand Google Drive, you need to understand its benefit. And once I explain its benefit, I think that you understand why you might embrace Google Drive as a way to work on and share your documents. We eventually found ways to save our documents on separate drives, one of them being a floppy drive. Once it was on that floppy drive, we could pull out that floppy disk and we could take it all over the place with us wherever we wanted to go, even to another computer. And so we had a new way of saving the documents and transporting it without just printing it. But this is a little outdated, so I think we need to talk about something else. With the invention of the thumb drive, we now had another way of transporting our documents. But we learned very quickly that we now had a new issue. We had two copies of our document. They were the same version, but there were two separate copies of that document, and we started to learn the importance of remembering which version we were dealing with and where it was at. It got really interesting when we started transporting those documents to new computers and copying them over onto that computer. We now had technically 3 copies of that same document. Once changes started being made, things started to get really confusing. Can you see now why a different method might be important? I just made a change on this newest copy on this computer. So now I have version B. But now what do I do with the copy that is on the thumb drive and on the other computer? This is going to be a challenge. I can copy it back over and put a new version B on that thumb drive and then take it back over to the other one to have a new version B. But sometimes it gets confusing which version I'm dealing with and have I overwritten the previous ones or not. Along came the shared drive. With the shared drive, we now had the ability to have a copy on a server computer. Here's my server over here. I could then pull up from a computer of my own, I could pull up a copy from that server over onto my computer. Once I did that, then I could edit it, and this would become version B. And as soon as I hit save, it would overwrite what was going on here and make this version B. If somebody else tried to pull it up, many times they couldn't do that at the same time, which added a new problem, but at least this was a little bit better. Finally, someone said, well, let's just keep the document on that server computer. So Google has a server computer that they have off somewhere, wherever Google has their servers, and they have a document on there, but they've transformed that document from a Word document to a Google document. Very similar in many of its features, but the best advantage is that now each of the individual computers that might be looking at that document aren't actually copying it over. They're just looking at the original document. The document stays on that computer. That is the invention of the cloud. Now, don't be afraid of the cloud. The cloud isn't as scary as it sounds. But this is the concept behind Google Drive. It's cloud storage. It's our document saved on a computer that Google owns on a server somewhere. And we can on each of our computers, pull up that document to look at and to view and to edit, to work on it, to print it from those computers. But we're going to keep that document on that server where it's safe and sound. Each of us can then be editing that document at the same time. We can see what the other ones are doing on that document. There can be multiple editors simultaneously. This is the whole concept behind Google Drive, and this is why you're going to have to learn how to use Google Drive, because this is where many of our online storage is headed, into cloud storage. This is also a great way, especially if you're an educator, to be able to share documents with students, see what they're doing, see how they're editing, have them turn things in without having to worry about thumb drives, USB storages, hard drives, shared drives, or even a floppy disk. In the next part of this tutorial, we're going to talk about the ins and outs of how Google Drive is set up, and then we'll talk about what you can do in Google Drive.